Welcome back to the Vet S.O.S podcast. Remember, don't drown the sea of transition. Grab the Vet S.O.S Lifeline. We are brought to you by the Who You Know Network and are a proud member of the Parade Deck community. We can also now be heard on Reese Across America on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. You can find Reese Across America Radio on iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and the TuneIn app. I'm excited today. We got two of the OGs back in the house. We got Mark sitting back in the hot seat, helping us with the interview today. And, of course, we got Michael Cortina back to talk about the Cortina Method and all the great things he's doing. Really excited to have everybody back on this today. So, Mark, you're filming in for Keith. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Hey, I can't complain. And if I did, it probably wouldn't help anyway. But, yeah, thanks for having me back in. Get back in the saddle here. It's been a little bit. So I'm super excited, and I know Michael's going to just kill it today, so just drop some flames. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So let's get into the introduction here. Michael is a trauma resolution expert. He's the founder and creator of the Cortina Method, a brain-based methodology to resolve trauma and other disturbing emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. As a licensed clinical social worker and a licensed clinical addiction counselor, he is a healer, national keynote speaker, and trainer on PTSD treatment, brain healing, and mindset transformation work. People across the U.S. and around the world hire Michael for his services. Throughout his career, he has transformed the lives of thousands of people who have gone on to live optimal life free of PTSD, guilt, anger, shame, anxiety, addiction, blame, fear, limiting beliefs, phobias, physical pain, and more. Michael provides a Cortina Method masterclasses and trainings throughout the country and has been featured on ABC, Fox, NBC, CBS, the CW, and Yahoo Finance, along with 400 plus publications and media outlets. And of course, Michael is a great friend of the podcast. We love the work he's doing with the veteran community. He's been on before. He's here to tell us, what else he's got going on. How you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing wonderful. It's great to be back and great to be connecting with both of you again. Like we said, the OGs. And as much as you're a supporter of what I'm up to, I'm absolutely a supporter of Vet S.O.S and everything you guys are doing.
Well, it is awesome to have you back in the house. So let's start with just a little quick refresher on what the Cortina Method is for maybe some of those people who haven't seen the first episode where we talked about it. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll jump into Project New Hope and what you got going on.
Sure. The Cortina Method is a brain-based healing methodology to resolve trauma and other disturbing emotions, thoughts, and behaviors without anybody having to relive any pain. It uses a very strategic protocol that's firmly rooted in neuroscience for both effective and efficient outcomes. Last thing I could say is that it involves a process of brain optimization. And brain optimization, I would describe, is a way of getting the brain to respond to life in the most enticing and optimal way possible.
I love that you don't have to relive the trauma. Too often, I've talked to people who have experienced great trauma, whether they're a veteran or some other a civilian who went through some traumatic experience, and their biggest fear is reliving that altogether. So, what's the benefit of not having to do that?
Yeah, so it's multifold. First and foremost, on the front end, it increases the probability and the likelihood that somebody actually pursues services. The idea, one of the things that keeps people out of seeking help is the notion that they're going to have to just talk about everything that they've been through, relive all the pain, recite all the detail of, people have been through some rough stuff, and recite all the detail of that. And that in and of itself becomes a deterrent and can keep people from seeking help, which, worst case scenario, that bottles up, and it leads into other things like addictions because the pain is too much, or even ultimately suicide. So it's huge. It's significant that people know you do not have to, it's not a prerequisite or a requirement that you have to relive any pain in the process of getting whatever it is that's going on resolved, completed. And the other thing that does is once, say, treatment starts, if somebody's involved in a treatment where they do have to talk about things and it sort of reactivates the nervous system and they start, the way that can look is they start feeling different things, maybe like anger, maybe anxiety, maybe fear, maybe rage, all sorts of different really distressing emotions. Well, then the system is really activated. The brain is just popping on fire. If you had it under a scan, you would see it would be popping and looking, changing colors. And that really then inhibits any potential success for optimization, as I see it, for the process to move forward, because then it's kind of like a 4-alarm fire and you're contending with that.
Yeah, the it's one thing to, have someone like you come on and tell us about what you're doing. It's a whole different world when you run into people who have experienced your program and what they've done. And I've been honored to actually have met a couple people that have gone through your program since the last time you were on, and getting their testimony and just hearing them talk about how great it was for them, really helps sell it for me, Mark. I mean, I don't know if you've been able to talk to anybody, but just this program in general, I mean, from the first time we heard it to now, I love it more and more every day.
Yeah, I think, and even the testimonials, and to your point, the first question that you asked about, or comment about not having to relive things, it's just so uniquely different than what more conventional, I think, therapy does. Because a lot of times, I think even with treatment of PTSD and trauma, we still have this kind of like, it's almost like a masculine macho approach to it. Like, hey, you got to eat your frog, right? You got to just go at it. How do you overcome your fears, kind of thing, right? You just do it, and it's like that may not necessarily be the best thing for a case of trauma, right? And it's certainly different, I think, for everybody. But that's, I guess, one of the questions I had for you is, how do you see others in your process, right? In others' processes, how do you see like the success rate in comparison? And then it maybe tied in with that, ongoing, because it's not just like, and I know you can overcome some challenges early on, just kind of like right at the beginning, but then you still need probably support then, right? To continue healing and continue to be able to overcome the day to day.
Great question. So, what we're seeing in terms of effectiveness rates in the Cortina method is an effectiveness rate of 90%. Now, that tells me two things. One, full transparency. It's not 100%. I mean, nothing is. Anybody tells you something's 100%, watch out anyway. So neither is this. The other thing it shows me is that it has a higher effectiveness rate than anything I've ever seen, studied, or practiced in this field. And the efficiency at which it happens, it can happen sometimes in as little as a single visit.
Man.
Now, that I understand how that sounds, and I understand that some people, this message might be more well received if I said, yeah, we'll have to meet 7, 8, 9 times. Maybe less eyebrows would be raised. And I've thought about messaging and so forth, but I'm thinking, this is what's happening. I mean, this is, and it's really a game changer because of the process that's being used. The whole process is structurally different from all the other things out there. And so the sustainability lasts. I just got feedback from a guest that I worked with 2 to 3 years ago. Everything is still in good order.
Wow.
So is that to say that we only ever do one TCM visits, TCM being the acronym for the Cortina method? We only ever do one? Certainly not. People get 2 and multiple visits. Sometimes people get a visit and then they might come in down the road for something else. There's some people who will get their visit to get some things resolved. Let's say it's PTS or trauma or guilt, something like that, get that resolved. And then they might continue on with their primary therapist to address, well, I got problems with my girlfriend. I'm just going to talk about, they don't need to address the trauma and the guilt anymore because the TCM has resolved that. But then they might continue on for other things. Maybe there's work stresses or relationship stressors, and they just want some ongoing support with that with their therapist. Sure, we do those sorts of collaborations and collaborative care as well.
Nice.
And you're also training other people to do this, right? The Cortina method.
Yeah. So what we're doing now, the vision is to create an army of healers who will heal, inspire, and invigorate 1 million people with unparalleled outcomes and optimal guest service.
Yes, let's go.
And right on. And I realize I certainly can't do that alone. So the only way to do this is run training programs and give away all the secrets, give away, I'm not looking to hold on to anything, and I tell people that's a little behind the scenes on the name, by the way. It was a way of putting some positive pressure on myself to make sure that I'm given the highest level of training, giving all the trainees the skill acquisition and competencies for them to do extraordinary work. My name's on this thing. So it was a way of doubling down on saying, we're not looking to hold anything close to the chest, give away all the details, how it happens, talk about the neuroscience. I could share a little bit about that if you'd like, the neuroscience, and and make sure that people are doing phenomenal work out there. So we have a training coming up in October of this year, and then another one in February. October is going to be in the greater Chicagoland area, Northwest Indiana side, and February is going to be down in Florida.
So since you're coming to Florida, what what are the prerequisites? Like, can anybody come and learn the Cortina method and become, a practitioner, or do you have to have some sort of background?
Yeah. So what I do is I do sort of a interview process. One of the things I'm committed to, if I could say the vision statement that I mentioned a moment ago in one word, that word would be impact. Impact, plain and simple. Having the most amount of people getting healing and resolution and moving forward in life. And working in healthcare and mental health care for many years in a former life of mine, before I got into this, I saw that there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy in healthcare that kind of slows things down. So I thought, let's break that barrier. And so one does not only have to be just a licensed mental health practitioner to receive training in this. Certainly, I've trained licensed mental health practitioners, naturopath physicians, medical doctors, psychiatric nurse practitioners. I've also trained life coaches. I've trained people who are involved in different healing modalities. Now, if someone says, yeah, I'm a coach, and I say, tell me a little bit about what you're doing. And they're like, well, I coach my son's little league team. you know, eh. But so no, one does not only just have to be a licensed mental health practitioner. I've opened it up so that it's available to more people, which means we can touch and heal more people's lives. And I got to say, a few come to mind right now that, aren't licensed mental health practitioners. They're killing it out there. They're doing extraordinary work. We keep data, we look at things, and they're doing really well.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Okay. So
Well, I was just going to ask
okay, go ahead.
real quick, just got a quick question. If somebody is interested in the training and development, how do they get started?
Thank you. Best way is reach out to me either at my website, michaelcortina.com. You could fill out a form and just indicate you're interested in training. That'll come to me. You can email me, optimize@michaelcortina.com, or you could call 219-405-7809. Any of those ways that work best for people to reach out and learn more about the training program are welcome.
Excellent.
That's awesome. So I've told you already, I've heard some personal testimonials from people who've gone through your program, which is awesome. I know you work with various veteran groups, which, with the veteran community, that there's some trust things that go on in our community, and we don't always trust everything we see. And so the fact that, I'm starting to hear personal testimonies only strengthens my belief in what you're doing. But then I also know that you're working with these veteran groups. So talk to us a little bit about Project New Hope and what you have going on with them.
Sure. And I'm so glad you're hearing, I don't think I knew that you're hearing some personal testimony. So that I'm really pleased to hear that. Yeah. So Project New Hope heard about the Cortina Method, and they reached out and said, we're interested in seeing what this might look like at our retreats to take care of veterans. And so we scheduled a pilot. late last year, and their CEO, what their CEO said, they've been running retreats for 13 years at that point, and said they had never seen anything like he'd seen would happen at that retreat. And so then going into this year, we're doing 3 of them, and going into next year, 4. So it continues to grow and scale. And I'll tell you, the veterans, to your point, sometimes in opening, when the retreat's just starting, they're sort of looking at us kind of, or maybe how's this going to happen? But it's them. It's not us. At the end of the retreat, they're saying, man, you said this stuff was going to be resolved, and it is. You said this stuff. We just heard at the last retreat, we heard a veteran tell a story of what her experience was that caused PTS only after she had experienced TCM. She wanted to do it early on, and I said, hit the pause button, because we knew it was just going to just trigger the heck out of her. And we said, hit the pause button, please. Let's, do the TCM, and we'll check back later. Did the TCM. Closing group said, I really want to tell this story. I think it can help others. She told a story that it is suitable maybe for the worst horror movie you've ever seen on the big screen. I mean, just unthinkable what this woman went through. Truly, I mean, horrifying. And she told that whole story, kept everything in line, everything, she went through that. There is no way, she would have said, that she could have ever have done that before without completely losing it. And so we had another veteran who had data, said, look at my sleep app. This is, my sleep and my stress levels are usually at this. Received TCM, and then during our second visit said, look at this after just our first visit. And the numbers were, some of them were multiple double numbers. I want to say 60, 70% improvement, just extraordinary difference. And it was the hard data from the sleep app, or this, not only just the sleep app, but throughout the day, stress levels and so forth. So yeah, there's some really good work happening out there. And they're seeing it with the model and with veteran use. And we've actually had a generous donor who also is committed to this, that says, you know what, we're going to expand the scope of services. So what we're also offering through them is TCM as a standalone service for veterans at no cost. In other words, you don't have to go to a retreat to receive it. Mm-hmm. So there's also standalone, for lack of a better word, outpatient, standalone TCM visits that are available to veteran and their families. Spouses and children and so forth.
That's actually a question I had. Multiple questions just spinning around my head right now. But one, I guess maybe for the first, I'll start with a comment, which is law enforcement, right? A lot of veterans go into law enforcement once they transition out of the military. And, I, for one, have a good friend who we lost him, and his spouse, his wife, is now, surviving and dealing with the trauma of that. And it wasn't even an on-duty thing. It was an accident outside on a lake. But, I think that there's a lot of need, not just in the veteran community, but this is, and obviously you're on all the media outlets and everything like that. So this is something that, as a revolutionary approach to treatment, man, we need to get this on blast everywhere. The second thing, and this is more my question, would be, adults we get, and you mentioned family members. So in that, I deal with a lot of times like grieving children and things like that. People that have lost kids that have lost parents. Is your method effective? Can children benefit from it? Does it work on them?
Absolutely. We've gone as young as, I want to say, 5 or 6 years old.
Wow.
So TCM has been applied with children, with teenagers, with adults, with geriatrics. The full spectrum.
Yeah, even kids that lose, parents out overseas on the battlefield. Huge need there too, I think. So. Great.
Yeah, you know, what happens is there's, you know, people think about the events so many times, and what I share is that, you know, a sharp departure here is that we view it as it's not the events that's causing the distress. And, you know, this is what I've heard in so many clinical staffings throughout my career. Why is, you know, the person experiencing panic or nightmares or whatever, anger? Well, it's you know, the battle that took place overseas. It's the deployment. It's being away from family. It's, you know, sexual abuse, physical abuse. It's all these things. And I say we have zero capacity to influence events that have already taken place. I've never been able to do it. But what we've learned is how the brain works, and we can update and optimize there such that the way the brain processes the information, it's not like people are going to forget about things, but it just won't push buttons anymore. And so, one huge operative component in this, there's a lot happening, but one of the pieces is called memory reconsolidation. And just briefly, if you think about a short term memory goes through a process of consolidation to become a long term memory. And the neurons go through a process of protein synthesis, and then the proteins essentially sear the memory into long term memory. So, reconsolidation is anytime that memory is retrieved, it has to go through another process of this protein synthesis to continue on in memory. Well, that neuroscience finding says, wait a minute, there's a window of opportunity where we can intervene. And so in the Cortina method, there's very strategic and intentional movements that really fully execute on that neuroscience finding that there's this reconsolidation process. There's this window that it has to go through before it gets stored back into memory. And that's where we can cause so much healing. There's, like I said, a lot of things going on. Hopefully that makes some sense. That's a piece of what's happening.
It makes sense, and I don't understand medical stuff at all. So,
Well, and I guess with the just the innovativeness of the treatment, the response in some of the communities, veteran community, right, and Project Hope, and some of the things that you're doing there, Project New Hope, excuse me, some of the things you're doing there. Do you have help and support, a foundation, perhaps? I mean, I'm not sure that I'm guessing that you're not a nonprofit, but you know, you're doing some great things and you're giving, right? So do you have support? Are there some foundations or things that you have relationships with, or do you need more support financially, um, media, otherwise?
Oh, thank you for asking. That's a great question. We can always use support. I mean, as much as we've done, I got to tell you, I feel like it's only the tip of the iceberg. I think there's so much more to do. We can always use support in all the ways that you mentioned, financially, media, getting the word out there, um, in all ways. Yes, at the moment we're not a not-for-profit, but we have found ways to partner with other not-for-profits, and as a way of those who might be interested in contributing financially to this cause and being part of the solution. And maybe everyone has a different role to play. Some people have, you know, networks and connections. Some people have media. Some y'all running podcasts. Other people, you know, have means and want to help financially. Well, you know, we're not a not-for-profit, but we have some creative ways that we can do that, and that helps tremendously on multiple levels. Whether it's getting people access to services, or even some people want to even donate sometimes, like more of like a scholarship fund. Maybe somebody who needs a little bit of financial. Think about college, right? Maybe they need a little financial assistance to get into the training programs. Some people like to help even in that way so that we create more healers and make more impact.
That's awesome. I actually strategically am asking these questions because I'd like to make an introduction for you. I have a connection of mine who runs here locally, Texas Fallen Officer Foundation. And they also have a national fallen officer foundation for police, right? Police and first responders. So, yeah, I would like to make that introduction with you. They do have a foundation, maybe help expand some of your work there. So,
Oh, so appreciate that. I appreciate you thinking of that, and the doors are open.
awesome.
And we'll see if we can get you too much work. Yep. Because you and I have already talked. As we move forward, S.O.S moves forward, and starting to launch a nonprofit of our own as well. You're one of the resources I want involved. I love what you're doing, and I love it so much that I'm actually going to put my money where my mouth is and participate in either doing one of these one-on-ones or trying to make it to a Project New Hope event, which I have a good draw to go to. My family is all from Worcester, Mass, and everything, so it'd be great. I haven't been back to Massachusetts in years, so I probably need to go. Plus, I love me some steamers and lobster, so I got to get up there, and don't get too much of that down here in Jacksonville, Florida. But I want to participate in that. And honestly, one of the things that triggered that was I watched a war movie recently, and it shut me down for the entire weekend. I don't know what it was, but like something just triggered inside, and like I was just in a weird place all weekend. And it made me realize, you never know what's going to, cause things to happen. So definitely going to be working with you here in hopefully the near future. But I love what you're doing. I mean, and you and I have talked numerous times, and I'm proud to tell you that I've been hearing, positive reviews from. I just stumbled on people. It wasn't like I was looking for, personal testimonies about you. Just happened to stumble on and mentioned your name. And yeah, I went through this program, and it's a credit to what you're doing, man. So definitely keep doing what you're doing. Mark, unfortunately, we're running down to the end already.
Yeah, man, these things go by so quick. It's just mind blowing how these things go. Because I mean, guests like you, Michael, we can talk with, I'm sure, for an hour session for sure. So, but again, what's the best place for our audience to connect with you, to reach out, to engage?
Yeah, so I'm on the social media channels, LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. Best way is probably the website, michaelcortina.com. There you'll see all sorts of information, and it's sort of bifurcated. There's one tab that's more for guests. The people that we serve, we call guests. We don't call them clients or patients. We call them guests. So there's one tab that has some drop-down menu for guests who want to explore and learn more about it. And then there's another side for practitioners who might want to be interested in the training programs. I mean, anybody could go to any tab, but it's bifurcated for ease of use there. michaelcortina.com.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And on behalf of the Vet S.O.S family, we'd love to thank you for joining us and just sharing everything that you did today. Amazing work that you're doing. Make sure to follow and subscribe to us on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms. And remember, do not drown in the sea of transition. Grab the Vet S.O.S Lifeline.